So on January 1st, we moved on to 40 acres of undeveloped land in our camper trailer. Moving on to undeveloped land means that you don't have water unless the land is providing you with water, and you do not have electricity unless you're getting it brought onto the land. And we were moving on to undeveloped land with neither of those two very essential elements for living, and we had to figure out how we were going to get them. We were pretty excited because when we were looking at the land, we did see water. We saw a bunch of streams and creeks and ended up finding out that this was actually the end of a large creek that's in our area. So it is the overflow for it and is not actually water all the time, all year round. So unless it rains a lot and there's overflow, we don't have water. This ultimately meant we needed to figure out another water source, and we needed to figure it out fast. We came across this idea to use water collection totes to collect rainwater that we could then use for our indoor plumbing. And so we've been doing that for the last year, and these just sit at the base of the four corners of our house where the gutters can then drain into them. Part of living in Tennessee, though, is that there are dry seasons where rain is not happening and there are droughts, and so you may not have as much rain to be able to collect. And there are times when we had fear that we were going to run out of water, and so we found this local spring that we are just able to go to whenever we find a need. It is good to get filtered through for drinking water, and also good to just start refilling our totes if we ever find that rain is low. Because we're so far out, it was going to cost a lot of money in order to bring out power to get us on the grid. So, with us homesteading, it just made more sense to be off-grid anyway. So we leaned into solar power, and we started off with a few different types of panels and eventually grew our collection to be able to bring in more power. And so right now, we're pretty much living a normal life and being able to run the basic amount of electricities that you would in any other household. We do have to be a little conscious in the evenings, and we do have to run a generator, but other than that, everything is pretty stable and normal. For a family of 4 with 2 dogs, that camper was not holding us for very long. We were so grateful when we found this home that was fairly inexpensive and it gave us an opportunity to refresh it and kind of do some renovation and remodeling on it to get it to a place where it was nicer to live in, safer to live in, and it didn't need a whole lot of work in comparison to the other ones that we were finding around the same price range. There's still some refinishing that needs to happen with the home, like a new window, new windows, and things like that we haven't been able to tackle yet just because the home is not in its forever place, and it could also go through some additional damage trying to get it back there. So we're trying to be careful with being happy with where we're currently at and also being cognizant that more damage might come, and we're going to wait to finalize all that stuff until it gets back to where it's going to be forever. Even though we had a house, we didn't have our stuff here. It was all still in Michigan. So Jonathan actually built this really cool lean-to shed type building so that he could go and get our stuff from Michigan, bring it back, and store all of the excess like workout equipment and things like that our new home would not fit. It was a happy day when Jonathan came back with all of our stuff. I had my couch, I had my washer and my dryer, which I had not been able to wash and dry my clothes in quite a long time. And so very exciting to have all of our stuff back. And not only that, but our chickens came with it. I had really been missing our dear Henrietta, the sweetest hen around, and so she was finally back with us. Of course, if you have chickens, you need a coop for them, and we didn't have one. So Jonathan was really nifty and scrappy and pulled all of this together to make a coop out of supplies that we pretty much already had. And that's the biggest thing I can tell other homesteaders or people who want to homestead is that the greatest skill you can have is resourcefulness. While we were waiting for our chickens, who we were missing so much, this rooster, who we named Julian, ended up just showing up on our land and hanging out with us the entire time until we got our chickens back, and then became part of our flock. He was such a great rooster. We didn't experience any aggressiveness from him at all, and he was such a good defender of the flock that he sadly passed away as a result of defending them against a predator attack. But before he went, he ended up having 2 baby chicks with Henrietta. We had a bunch of new additions to our flock this year, including like 20 guinea fowl and probably the same amount of meat birds, and all of them ended up getting picked off by predators, whether they just ran off and didn't come back, whether they were getting attacked in the middle of the day, or they weren't going into the coop at night, sleeping in trees and going that way. We just kept losing them one by one. Rosella was another one of those unfortunate birds that just didn't go into the coop at night and ended up disappearing. We had the use of a friend's backhoe for a little bit, as well as a really great neighbor who came over with his tractor and helped us clear a spot for a garden, and also just a place for like our solar panels and kind of get some of the brush out of the way. We were told at the beginning of our journey, after we had already bought our land, that we weren't going to be able to grow anything since we were on top of a ridge, and that has not proven to be the case. As you can see just from this shot here, like, it's been amazing that like this grass has grown and we didn't do anything. We didn't plant this. It just started growing on its own just from being cleared, and we just had to keep up with, you know, the height and the maintenance of it. But there you go. We've already got grass. We put up some T-posts and wrapped the whole garden with some fencing to keep the chickens out and bunnies and anything else that's gonna, like, you know, eat the goods. And also just kind of got like a bit of a makeshift trellis going on here, and we're gonna grow some veggies. Having a garden this year ended up being super challenging, and the main reason for that was our water situation. Being that it's summer when you're having a garden, summer is one of the driest seasons, and so we weren't getting very much rain. We had to reserve the rain we were getting for our own water needs, and so it was just really hard being able to get the plants enough water to be able to grow and to flourish and produce. And so a lot of the plants that I did grow this year ended up not producing for us as a result of not being cared for adequately. Despite all of that, we were able to harvest some things like sunflowers and cucumbers and tomatoes and watermelon and corn, but definitely not as many varieties as I had hoped. Columbia, Tennessee is where the Homestead Festival is hosted on Rory Feek's farm, and because that is very close to where we live, I got to go this year, which was extremely exciting. I got to see a bunch of people that I follow and I learn from and look up to within the homesteading space, and just learned so much, and that was one of the highlights of my year. Since our home doesn't have a furnace, one of the big projects for us was making sure we had enough wood to heat our home through the winter, and we ended up picking up this wood-burning stove and installing it, and also making sure that there was a backdrop, that it was safe and ready to go for our winter use. At the end of the year, we finally were able to get our road cleared, and this allows us to be able to move our home back to where we want to end up having it. And so we still have like another road that we have to end up building out, but at least this is the main road, and so we got it cleared all the way up into the majority of where our homestead is actually going to be. Another really exciting part of this is that at the same time we had a bunch of chert laid down where we park so that our shoes would no longer be muddy and we weren't living in Mud World anymore. This year came with a lot of challenges and new experiences living in a new state. Tennessee has tornadoes, which Michigan does not usually have, and so we had one that hit really close to where we live, and we don't have a place like a basement to go to, so it is a little scary kind of being in that environment. And we also had a wildfire scare that nearly breached our land because our neighbor ended up setting some brush on fire and it got out of hand during a drought. So Old Smokey wasn't kidding when he said only you can prevent wildfires. And if that weren't fun enough, we have rattlesnakes. This is the third one we encountered on our land, and I expect it won't be the last. Nature is a force to be reckoned with for good and bad, and even though there's all that craziness, there's a lot of beauty that comes along with it. Thanks so much for joining us on our homesteading adventures this year in Tennessee. I'm so excited and looking forward to seeing what 2024 has in store, and can't wait to take you along with us.